Yeah, welcome once again to our this Family First Malaysia webinar. And as just now my wife Tinky shared with you, that every week we have got this program running on the weekly basis because we really have taken on during the MCO to do our this webinar and also do our this coaching session and mentoring session. And we are so thankful that because we are able to complete a 1 year program in within 3 months. All right. So now that every week we are now getting all these, inviting all these speakers to come in to share with us their journey and as well as also in relating to the family. So if you look at the family, I just want to have a very quick sharing with you of what Family First is all about so that you will know that what we are doing, all right? So let me just see, I can share the screen from here. Yep. So let me just share very quickly with you. Okay. Wait. Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Double income, double joy.
Okay, you can see my slides, right?
Yes.
Okay, I will mute every one of you so that there will be least disturbance. Let me see, how do I mute every one of you? So all of
Can you
you.
click the slide?
Okay, now I meet all of you, and okay, for those of you who are new to Family First, you know that Family First Malaysia is a non-profit organization. We serve people regardless of ethnic, religious background, or social status because we practice these 7 values that govern our words and also actions. The number 1 is that we believe that every human being is of infinite worth, and the best place to discover this is within the family. And we believe that strong, healthy families are the cornerstone of civilizations. We also believe that every family can be happier and stronger and even more united. And we also believe that in the power of prayer and the eternal value of every soul. We believe in the power of partnership, that together we can do much better, much more than we could ever do on our own. Now, we also believe that we must always conduct all our operations, partnerships, and finances with the highest ethical and moral standards. We believe we must always respect and fully comply with all the local and national laws in every jurisdiction in which we operate. Now, these are the 7 values that you can see that Family First Malaysia, that what we are actually practicing right now. Now, Family First Malaysia, you can see that our vision, we exist to transform next generation fathers, supported by mothers, to build better families, resulting in a better workplace, a better society, and a stronger nation. Now, I believe that everything starts with one person. Then it comes into a couple. From a couple, then it evolves into a family. From a family, then it actually extends to a community. From a community, then it will actually extend to a nation. So it's actually impacting the whole nation in the aspect that we, as a family, if you have a happy family, then of course you will become a very productive unit, in the entire nation. And we also partner with like-minded organizations to restore, reshape, and release men and women to become better couples and parents in the context of original marriage with our 3F focus. In Family First Malaysia, we focus on 3 areas. There is family, finance, and also fitness. Because we believe that if you want to build a good family, you need to have a better family. And in this better family, I'll go through with you afterwards, is that we have got 6 modules that we take our couples through. And these 6 modules includes that we help couples to formulate their strategy and also their plan so that they will know how to do a normal family vision and be able to actually take their family in a proper course. And we also share with them in terms of strengthening their families, husband and wife, as a couple. And also we share with them about the role of a husband, all right? What is the role in the biblical way, and also the role of a wife from the biblical perspective. And we also talk about intimacy, and then also the last module will be on parenting. And on the Better Finance, we have got 4 modules that take our couple through in terms of letting our couple know that what is the financial stewardship, and also God's purpose for money, and how do they manage money as a couple, and finally achieving financial freedom. And in terms of better fitness, we also share with them on the holistic side so that they will be able to actually live well, and also not only just physically, emotionally, spiritually, but also financially. All right. Now, on the family front, we say that we want to double our love, our joy, and our peace in our families to restore broken relationships, reshape the home environment, and release next generation leaders using home as the starting point of leadership training. So you can see it is very important that if we don't set the right model for our home, that's why it is important for us as husband and wife that we continue to model, become the model to our children, and then that will also impact the society around us. And on the finance side, and that's why you can see that now we are focusing on the finance. This week we have Roger. In fact, Roger came on 2 weeks ago, and now he's coming on to speak on today's topic, which is very exciting. And next week, we also have another very good speaker from Hong Kong. He will share with us how to cope, with money crisis, because Derek Liu is helping a lot of those young professionals in Hong Kong right now how to cope with their money crisis. All right. So important part is that for us to double our income and net profit ethically and also righteously, we value innovation to double our giving. Because when you are able to earn, then you are able to give. And also with our bad debts all settled, so that we are able to achieve oneness, especially with money. As far as money is concerned, then we will be able to actually build a happy family. And of course, that will begin with the fathers and mothers to model better financial stewardship. Now, for those of the couples who have gone through the financial stewardship, and I believe that they will also be able to impart this area to actually other people as well. Then we have the fitness to double our mental and physical health through cultivation of positive mental attitude, holistic exercise, and nutrition, resulting in high energy, wisdom to achieve things of big and lasting impact. All right. So, just a moment. Oh, who is it? Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Now, during this lockdown period, we launched our book, the e-book, that means from Ayaya to Hallelujah, to help actually those people who are in financial stress or in difficulties, so that to share with them the journey that we have gone through. So we are so thankful that we got a couple of thousand people who came on to actually read our e-books, and not only just reading our e-books, and we also receive quite substantial donations from friends and for those friends of ours. And we actually use the money to help COVID-19, those victims. So thank God for that. We are able to do something for the community. All right. Now, as far as for today's, the speaker is concerned, we are so glad to have Roger Lam to come on to actually share with us about the is money your master or your servant. So I give you, wait, let me just, Roger Lam, I make you as our co-host right now. So right now you can be the co-host. You're on right now, Roger. So you are now the co-host. So I give you Roger Lam right now. Roger Lam, you're on.
Thank you, brother. Let me press the share screen button. Oh, got it. How do I get to, oh, here we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes, yes, Roger, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, brother. Sorry, I'm not very good with tech stuff. So, okay, is
good.
So this, you can all see this, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brother Tek Singh and Sister Tinky, for inviting me back. It's a real privilege to start this journey 6 weeks ago when I shared the first session with Family First Malaysia, and subsequent to that, the Lord has really blessed me in giving me 7 more sharing sessions with Malaysia, so 8 in total over 7 weeks. And so I've done my story over, which spans over 2 books. And with one particular FGB chapter, I was able to, they were gracious enough to give me 4 Wednesdays to tell my story. So there's just so much. I've now realized that to tell it well and to tell it in full, I mean, basically it's close to 4 hours of content. But the problem is, a lot of it has been recorded and it's been posted on the internet and YouTube. So Brother Tek Singh encouraged me to prayerfully consider doing something differently, because it's very easy to watch one of the reruns and get my story. So today, I'm going to do something very different. I have not done a seminar style, really, and partly because I've always felt that I'm an untrained and an ordinary believer, and so I don't, it feels a little bit queasy for me to teach, so to speak. But so today's going to be a totally different format, and I apologize if you don't like it as much as my testimony. But I think this is sort of, but in a sense, this is sort of like a guided tour. I'm going to ask a lot of guided questions, and then instead of saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that, it's more like I would just share from my repertoire of a lot of stories. And what I plan to do is to share stories that were in my books, or even some stories that I felt that I wouldn't even dare to put in my book, because I was afraid that people would take it the wrong way. So these stories that you're going to hear today, you would not find it on YouTube. So I give you some assurance that at least it'll be fresh. Okay, so, and Brother Tek Singh and I, we together over a few minutes on a phone call, we came up with this title, which we believe would be somewhat provocative, and it would be inducive for more people to listen in. So, is money your master or your servant? So let me first start by prefacing saying that this is not us. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. We're not here to judge or condemn. Basically, we have all fallen short, and we need God's grace and power to become more and more like Jesus every day. So I think I'm happy to make this presentation available, and you can ask Brother Tek Singh for a copy. Every now and then, I would say maybe like once a month, you can click open it and then just review it, and then just to see you can make a mental note to yourself whether you've made any progress since our initial diagnosis today, for the lack of a better word. So question number 1. So just to prep you, there's 6 questions in total. So hopefully I will not go too far beyond 3 o'clock today, and save more time for Q&A. that's the real punchy time. Do you feel you have enough or not? Well, for me, this is where it all started. When my story started when I was stripped away of my family company. That was when it was stolen through, well, not stolen, but it was taken over, in a hostile takeover. So my birthright was taken away, and then I stopped trusting in my parents' ability to provide for me when I was 14, and I felt that I had to basically take up matters upon myself. And so I thought, well, the only thing I could do is to study really hard to get into a really good university and then get a really good job, blah 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 blah, make a lot of money. So that's when it all started. And then and then God's grace is he took a long time. He took over 10 years to teach me one Bible verse, and that's Micah 6:8. In there, he taught me how to act justly towards him in terms of money, which is to tithe in full. And then he taught me to, through a supernatural story of lending, that in the seventh year of making a loan that I didn't really need to, the Holy Spirit spoke to me for the first time, and asked me, and gently asked me when I made the loan, and then I was reminded it was 7 years ago. And it was at a point when I became more familiar with the Old Testament, such that I would know that seventh year in the Old Testament meant year of debt forgiveness. And so ever since 2005, when I first made a commitment that I would follow God's teaching in the area of money, and at that point I was not so well versed with I didn't realize that it turns out that money and possessions was the largest percentage of biblical teachings in the whole Bible. So inadvertently, in a really uneducated kind of way, I signed up and made a commitment that I would obey God in the largest percentage of the Bible. So thereafter, God further trained me to in a model where I had dropping income, increasing expenses. He helped me to overcome the fear of negative cash flow, and then eventually, I believe in hindsight, is to prepare me with no cash flow from paychecks. So last time I shared that my department at CIMB was shut down, and then I decided to write a book first before looking for a new job, and then in a supernatural story, God told me to sell everything and to make good on a pledge that I made for church premises. So what happened afterwards was basically I thought that after I write the book, and then God would give me back my salaried life, but it was nothing further than that. He took me on a very supernatural journey to places like, he first took me to China, even before the book was published. And he brought me to two mass media ministries in China, and did a interview on Weixin with a Gongzhong Hao, and then also with another mass media ministry, and filmed a short video, which has gone all around the world with different language subtitles. But my point is, as I thought I was going to fully trust in Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides, as my source of provision. And even though I had written books on it and all that, I was still sometimes feeling a bit insecure. And I even made the mistake of thinking that this would be the royalties and sales from this would become my source of provision, and not really source of provision, but it would be my source of cash flow. But over time, God just kept, like peeling an onion, like layer by layer of any kind of dependency that's away from Him. He just took it away from me. So now, is it possible for anyone to say that they have enough? Well, I think it's impossible. My view is that there is no amount of money that could diminish one's need for God. Um, in a Because I mean, last time I shared about the ultimate truth about money, which is a download that I received under a very stressful situation when I was given the unexpected opportunity to have to share my stewardship and testimony to a top 100 Forbes global billionaire in Shanghai. And the punchline for the ultimate truth about money is no matter how much money we have, and even if we could bring that money with us to heaven, it is still not going to cut it because of the infinite duration of eternity. And our normal notion of security when we have, let's say a big amount of money and we divide it by a relatively modest duration of, let's say, 30, 50, or even 70 years, then we may have the false sense of security that amount of money is able to provide for us. But really, our ultimate problem is much bigger than that. Our ultimate problem is we didn't ask to be placed on this planet, right? So it was all God's design. And at some point, with a maximum expiry date of 120 years that was defined in Genesis chapter 6, verse 3, we will depart from this planet. Then I think if you don't know where you're going, I think that's exceedingly frightening. No matter how much money you have, no matter how successful you've been, you cannot overcome that uncertainty. You cannot overcome that risk. You have to be super brave to think you stand a chance of being able to navigate that exit well. So in Hebrews 13, 5, and this is I looked through a lot of different translations, and I like this one in particular. It says, "Stay away from the love of money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never fail you nor forsake you." Now, I found that to be true, certainly in my life. I look back every time there's a crisis or a problem, as long as I choose to obey God, then something incredible happens, and not only am I rescued from that immediate problem, something much better happens. So it is consistent with a lot of scripture that we can go through, we can experience the peace of God that transcends understanding. That's from Philippians 4, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think, the next question we will get to, how important obedience is. So I think, in another passage in the Bible, basically, God kind of says we're placed where he wanted us to be. So now I'm not against people trying hard to strive for optimizing their talents. But it has to be, but you still, no matter where you're at whichever stage of the journey you're in, you need to be content that God knows you, that he loves you so much, that he sacrificed his son for you so that you can be saved. And this God, he owns the whole universe. Everything belongs to him. And he's given us a right to tag along, to be co-heirs with Jesus. So if we start to really process that and to really believe in that, then man, this is so incredible. So in the interest of time, let's move on to the next question, which is something we've already talked about in a way. Who do you trust to be your ultimate provider, God or yourself? I've struggled a lot with this. Let alone my childhood and my youth. Even after I was somewhat, justified and sanctified, I was still, sometimes think that I need to invest in a certain way because that's become my only source of income. And I was, blessed with the opportunity to generate some wealth. Certainly not a massive amount of wealth, but enough wealth such that if I earn, a fair percentage, not a crazy percentage of returns on it, then maybe I could, just keep the family going and pay the bills and so on and so forth. But it got to a point where I became so warped. I was still trapped in the one talent servant mentality. I was trying to take the minimum amount of market risk and do minimum risk trades, and just to earn the bare minimum, so that if everything works out, I would just be able to meet the family expenses on a yearly basis. Now, I would still tithe on this amount, whatever that investment amount of income is, even if it falls below run rate. I would still tithe on it. However, it became obvious to me one day recently that if this is the way I continue to operate my family expenses, would I ever be willing to give away that nest egg? The answer is no, because if I give any part of that away, then that means I need to take more risk in order to generate the same amount of returns, just to break even for my own family's expenses. So God taught me on my birthday a couple months ago. You may remember I have a very rigorous quiet time routine, chapter of Old Testament, chapter of New Testament, chapter of Psalms, and a chapter of Proverbs. And on my birthday this year, it happened to be Psalms 23. And this time around, I've read Psalm 23 many, many times. But this time around, when I've read Psalm 23, verse 3, it had a massively different impact on me. God promises to make my path straight for his name's sake. Now, this is so important because of all the training, all the experiences, and especially when I blend that in with my then mentality of taking minimal risk. The burden I had in my heart for the poor and those who are suffering in COVID, because I had a very simple conviction, and that is, with all the central banks in the world providing infinite quantitative easing, once there is the hint that this pandemic is going to be over, because so much cash is going to be printed and is being printed, assets are going to go through the roof. And the poor, who already don't have the ability to own assets, they are going to fall even further behind. Imagine that when inflation kicks in, it's going to be so much harder for them to feed themselves. I'm afraid even their rent, however little it is, will become more unaffordable. And there are fewer and fewer menial jobs being available in the economy. So long story short, I changed my mentality completely. Now I can say hand on heart, I am holding the least amount of cash over the last 20 years in my portfolio, and everything is put in assets, in risk assets. And the reason is not because I want to elevate my standard of living, is not because I'm in fear that God will not provide for me, but rather it's I'm investing, I'm taking risk on behalf of the poor. Now, unfortunately, I'm not rich enough to make a big difference, but I believe I can make a small difference. And if God keeps giving me opportunities around the world to tell business people and to tell middle class people about this, and if so, God blesses me, with his grace and his power, and unveil this deceitfulness of truth and impact and encourage more people to do likewise, then collectively, I believe can make a big difference. So if we look at came from the story of Abraham and Isaac, when God asked Abraham to go and sacrifice his one and only son. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the story, so we're not going to go into details today, but I highlighted a few words in green. Now you will see that basically I'm just going to read verse 16 to you. The Lord says, because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. And then if you look at the last sentence, again, through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. So I think, I'm no theologian, but if you look at this, this is undisputable, unrefutable linkage. Obedience and blessing. And the purpose of the blessing is to bless all the nations of the earth. So strangely, this is kind of, maybe I'm on the right path of trying to be a blessing to those who cannot help themselves. And one more point I want to talk about, a lot of times we think of, Jehovah Jireh, he's the provider, he's a God who provides. And we just think about money terms. Provision is much, much more than just money. Think about our lives, our health, and the biggest risk that we ever face is where we're going to go after this life. So redemption, salvation, God provided all of that. And just looking at that passage from Genesis 22, when God mentioned that that Abraham was forsake his one and only son, well, that sounds exceedingly similar to what God had already decided to do through his one and only son, Jesus. Certainly well before Abraham came about. So friends, if there's one thing that you take away from today, I just want you to remember this, is that all blessings hinge on just one thing, and that's obedience. That's also basically the how God prompted me to write my second book, Loose to Find, Change of Control. So basically, this is my 1-year spiritual diary in 2018, where after God wrestled control away from me on my money, just as I thought that was all the sanctification was required, God was like, nope. He then wrestled away control from my say over what my time was going to be in my career. He then wrestled away from me my sense of personal security. On a lot of places I wouldn't have necessarily, volunteered to go to do ministry. And last but not least, he wrestled away from me my control over what I feel is my sense of life purpose is. He took, in a loving way, and he intended good for me and also for the world, to take away all this control from me so that I will have total surrender to him in all those areas, such that I will become fully obedient, and that I can basically, so that whenever he puts something on my plate, I will have the bandwidth and the time and the desire to entertain any small and obscure speaking engagement. He has certainly given me a humble heart to not mind any small beginnings. And just looking back, I can see it, kind of like building. And hand on heart, God can take me as far, or he can grow me as much or as little as he wants. I can be, as long as I'm pleasing him, as long as I'm useful to him, as long as I'm doing his will and serving his kingdom, then, you know, there's no better there's no better reward than that, because now instead of going for praise from people, I'm really going after praise from him. One day I really want to hear him say to me, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So let's keep moving along. Easy or difficult do you find giving to others? Now, in the last session, I talked about that, 7-year learning journey about the zero interest loan, and then after 2 years, that brother defaulted on it, and I kept seeing him every Sunday at church. And then, on the 7th year, all of a sudden, I hear from the Holy Spirit audibly for the first time ever, and he basically asked me whether I was willing to obey and to observe the year of debt forgiveness. Now there's another giving story I like to share with you. It's in my book, but I almost never talk about it because a media expert said, well, there are too many loose stories. It doesn't fit into the storyline. But I'll take this opportunity to go over to share it with you. 2016, there was a very, very severe fire in Hong Kong in a storage in a mini storage facility. And the blaze was so bad. On the first day of the fire, when it broke out, a young fireman passed away. He was around 30 years old, and he left behind a widow and a young child. And I felt really, really moved, and felt that I really wanted to do something to help his family. So even before his widow's bank account information became available on social media, I was going around everywhere trying to find it, so on and so forth. And when it finally became available, I was, adamant that I was gonna, give to them. So I also contacted my mom, my parents, and my sister, see if they wanted to chip in. So my mom and my sister, they agreed to help this fireman's widow and child. They both agreed on the same amount. So I decided that, okay, I'm going to add a bit more on top of that and make it a nice round number. So immediately I, sent that off, made that transfer, and then I felt good. I felt that I helped them a little bit. The next day, another fireman passed away from that blaze, which kept going on for a while. And then I was thinking, well, what should I do about this fireman? He also left behind a widow and a child. Now, I'm a little bit ashamed to admit that I didn't feel as moved by this particular fireman, but then I thought, well, that's not right. I go through the same motion, and I asked my parents and my sister again. My mom continued to chip in the same amount. She agreed the day before. My sister didn't say anything, but I definitely don't blame her for it. And then I got the donor information, their account information, and I was standing in front of the ATM machine. Now, however much I keyed in, I thought to myself, only I would know, and only God would know, ever, right? But then, even though I didn't feel as moved by the second instance, somehow God told me to give the same, topped up amount, so that same nice round figure. And because there was one fewer contribution, so I ended up actually giving even more to this second fireman's widow and child. So, and then I was also thinking, well, what if there's a third, fourth, fifth fireman? What am I going to keep? Am I going to keep giving the same amount to them? But thankfully, that was the stop of the death toll from this tragedy, and from that point onwards, that nice round nice round figure became my unit of donations to any situation that I felt moved, um, and
The move.
and thank you, and that I felt God. So my rule of thumb is if I see something, even if it's on the newspaper, and I don't know them, they could be a believer, they may not be, but what tends to move me the most to tears is seeing the breadwinner at a grassroots family pass away, and then I would ask God, do you want me to help? And most of the time he tells me yes, and then I would try to find a way to donate for that family. So this I thought is a really nice translation of a verse that I'm sure is familiar with most of us. You received without paying. So this is the concept from Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. And also it's consistent with Job in the sense that, acknowledging that empty we came and empty we'll leave. So everything that we have, even our ability to generate wealth, that all comes from God. So we definitely received without paying. Now, that's not saying that you didn't labor for it, but your intellect, your ability to work and to have opportunities and to be born in a stable political and economic environment so that you have the chance to thrive, that is certainly no easy feat. And I don't think anyone can honestly boast about that. So if you received without aid, that's why I think, that's why the Bible suggests not charging interest to people when you make loans to help them. And what I've learned recently is if people ask you for a loan, just write it off, upfront, if it's an amount that you feel comfortable with, and don't count on it being paid back. That's probably a better way to manage your emotions and your friendship with or relationship with this person. Is money your means to an end or your ultimate goal? Well, this is really challenging because money is so deceptive, and a lot of Christians can end up serving mammon or serving money and not really serving God without even noticing, because I remember hearing Tim Keller in a sermon where he said he was preaching on the 7 deadly sins in New York City, and he was packed on 6 sessions, and the one session that he had super low attendance, it wasn't lust. That one was packed out. Most people were admitting that they have a problem with that. But it was greed. It was the session on greed that had the lowest attendance. A lot of people don't think they're greedy. And I think that this is a particularly important question to ask ourselves. I think it's important to go back to that same ultimate risk that we face. Is having a lot of money going to be able to mitigate that end of life risk at all? It may give you a more comfortable way of exiting, of having excellent first tier healthcare and a private room with a private nurse, but just having a lot of money, is that going to really help you? So this is a classic verse from 1 Timothy 6:17. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Now, I think everything is obvious in this verse, except the last part. God is not saying to people who have money to not enjoy themselves at all. So this is not about guilt. This is not saying if you have money, you need to absolutely not, not enjoy yourself, not enjoy with that money at all. I think the key danger is indulging in yourselves too much and too exclusively. If you're willing to share that with those who are in need, I think it's okay. And it's from that old hymn. Once you turn your eyes on Jesus, then very strangely, the things of this world will start to go dim. So, all the bling bling and all the excess kind of like pampering and luxury, after a while it will, it won't mean as much to you, and you won't crave for it as much. Now, what is obvious is if you put your hope in wealth, that is really dangerous because there's market risk, credit risk. I mean, in the global financial crisis, we've seen Lehman Brothers go under. It is just so uncertain on what the markets are going to do. The Dow Jones going up 1,000, 1,500 points a day, that's become common fare. So if you hang on too tightly to the market swings, if you hang on too tightly, and that's if you build your life on that, then that's really like what Jesus said is you're building your life, you're building your house on sand. When a crash comes, hasta la vista, it's gone. So we really need to be wise about building our lives with a foundation of the rock on Jesus, on Jehovah Jireh, and be content and not be overly dependent on the fixes of luxury and excess consumption. Number 5, is money your yardstick for your net worth or your self-worth? I have struggled with this so much in my whole life, really, up till maybe like recently. I think comparison is the quickest way to be unhappy, because most people, when they compare, they don't compare down. It's not when they compare, they compare up. So I used to think about, a lot of my colleagues and peers. I would be thinking, oh, why are they getting promoted faster than I am? Why did they get a bigger bonus? So on and so forth. And then, but if I keep on doing that, I would go crazy. My first boss at the hedge fund, he made over $1 billion each year for the past so many years. He's become super successful. So if I want to just compete and compare on that basis alone, I would be super depressed. I would be on antidepressant drugs for sure, and I would have to see a counselor nonstop. But our real self-worth it should be based on the highest price that someone was willing to pay for you. So always remember that God was willing to sacrifice his one and only son for you, just so that I mean he owns the whole universe. The only the only thing that was going a little out of hand or a little out of control was us. That's why he had to pay such a hefty price. He had to give his son to such suffering to get us back. So with that kind of price tag in mind, I don't think we should let our net worth, be confused with our self-worth. Again, it goes back to First Timothy, just a few verses earlier. For the love of money is a root of all the evils. Because of this craving, some people have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves to the heart with many pains. Now, notice that the verse is not saying money is a root of all the evils. It is the love of money that is the root of all the evils. So if you're blessed, it's okay. If you're blessed with wealth, just as long as you acknowledge that, you know, the ability to generate that came from God, and that basically you're not the owner of it, you're just the steward of it, or custodian or fund manager of it, and that you have a soft heart to realize that a lot of poor people, it's not because that they are necessarily unintelligent. It's not that they're necessarily lazy. It's just that, you know, maybe they never got the chance. They never got the break. So if you have a sufficiently soft heart to help them out, then I think, you know, you're in good standing. Last but not least, what kind of inheritance did you receive, or are you expecting to receive? And what inheritance would you like to pass on to your next generation? In the epilogue of my first book, Lost and Found: Money versus Riches, I named the epilogue. Let's see, what did I name it? It was called Inheritance Planning. Yes, it's called, yeah, Inheritance Planning. Can you see it? Yeah. So I have limited assets that have limited ability to generate income. So I love my kids a lot. Now, do I want to just give him that, the limited amount of assets with a limited amount of ability to generate income? Or do I want them to be you know, co-heirs and co-heiresses alongside with Jesus to tap into that infinite wealth? Now, the wise thing and the right thing is to choose the latter. So, whenever I get a teaching moment with them, you know, I don't put, you know, academics or schoolwork or tests or exams as top of the list. Whenever I have a chance to speak words of wisdom into them, you know, make an example for them or tell them about, it's about this one concept, and that is life is not about the abundance of things. So my son is turning 6 years old next month, and so this past year, in October, this last October, November, he was applying for primary one into primary school next year, and I, you know, he did well in the first interview, and then I said to him, okay, well, let's assume that, you know, you will get the second interview, and okay, I'll get you a toy. Now, by that point, by the time he was 5 years old, he was already well trained. He was slowly ingrained with the following idea: every time some new toy comes in, he needs to give an old toy away. So there's no accumulation problem. So it just becomes flat. It's let's see, last in, first out. And but then he was saying, "Oh, Daddy, I want a bigger toy this time." So I said, "Okay, well, then let's increase the leverage. So you have to give away more than just one toy if you want to get a really big toy." So he said, you know, and then we were like bargaining, you know. I started with 5, and then he countered with 2. So we settled with 4. So he had to give away 4 toys of his choice to get a big toy. So at first I said, okay, you know, here's your big pile of toys. Don't pick 4 out of that pile. At first he picked 4, you know, four balls or something. So I said, okay, if you give me all the same thing, which you don't value, then I'll get you a really big ball in exchange for 4 small balls. And he's like, no, I don't want that. And then he picked out 4 toys that was kind of like incomplete, that had pieces missing. I said, well, if you give away, you know, if that's what you want to give away, then I'll get you a really big toy that's kind of incomplete. And then he picked, And then he told me, okay, these 4 toys I don't really like. I can give away these. And I said, well, if you really give away things you don't like, then okay, well, then maybe I'll pick something that a big one, but you don't really like it all that much. So you get the idea. So I think it's important to, I think this is the most important inheritance that you can give. It's not monetary, but rather give away a mindset and a mindset of stewardship and Christ-like behavior, and pray that they will be filled with the Spirit, that they will gain favor with God and with people, and that they will grow up to be good servants of God. I think that's the best inheritance that anyone can pass on to their next generation. So these are the 2 verses that I wrote in my epilogue in the book. The bottom one is my birthday verse, which I talked about. Actually, I didn't talk about it. I only shared that in my testimony for Lose to Find. But yeah, so in the interest of time, I think I'm going to pause here and then go to questions. Thank you very much. Back to Brother Teksang and Sister Tinky.
Roger, you can lift your screen now. Stop the screen sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
You can see that. Go to the top there. You can see that. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Thanks,
Okay,
Roger.
done, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Roger. Because your voice was a little bit, lacking, and so yeah, because you did not use earphone, I think. So anyway,
Oh, sorry about that.
yeah, it's okay. Now I have got some question here for you, Roger. Let me
Mhm.
just go to the question here. So we have this Linda, Dr. Linda was asking this question: how do I know I don't have enough money?
How do I know I don't have enough money?
Hmm.
Well, nobody has enough money. I think that's even I mean, I think the classic line from Mr. Rockefeller, when someone asked him how much it took him to feel rich, he said one more dollar. So I think and I'm not trying to be cute here, but honestly, I mean, if there is no concept of enough, because money is so fragile, and it also depends on at what velocity you're spending that money, and whether you're able to replenish that with investment income or whatever. So I think, quite frankly, no one has enough money, or no one will feel that they have enough money. Um, it's all relative poverty, because once you start to compare up, then no one will feel rich. But then obviously there is absolute poverty line. Our respective governments, I'm sure will have guidance on what's deemed to be for you to fall under the grassroots level. But I mean, I think it's far easier to know that when you're really poor, when you really don't have enough. But to have a square meal on the table, and to be able to pay for your basic utilities and rent and public transportation. But but if you're above that, then I don't think anyone will really feel that will that they really do have enough money. Thank you.
Okay, I think that during this pandemic lockdown, it actually make all of us feel so rich, because we suddenly realize that we have we don't need so much of money to spend. We only need just a limited amount for our food, and that's it for a day. And then in the end, we realize that we actually have a lot more money, than what we thought to be, right? So I think that to feel that when we do not have enough money, uh, I think that depending on whether you are contented with what you have. Otherwise, you will continue, to feel that you don't have enough money,
Fully
So,
agree.
yeah. Then the thing is that the next question that the same Linda was asking, people say cash is king, but today you suggested to actually beat inflation by buying assets. So will you elaborate?
Okay, first, that's a great question. So first of all, I need to caveat saying that I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not licensed, and I'm not, steering you to do any financial investments in anything. So you please consult with your own licensed financial advisor before you take any action. So my basic premise, the basic thought is actually very simple. Central banks are now printing money at record speed just to prop everything up. So take the US government, for example. They are basically not willing to allow, the stock market to go down very much. It comes at a price to keep pumping the stock market with steroids. It is basically borrowing from the economy's future wealth. When you print so much money and when you borrow so much money, at some point, actually, we may have already passed that point. They won't be able to repay that money. So, if at some point, people lose confidence in any particular government to keep up with the ability to roll their debt, then that could be a big collapse.
Yes.
Now, because money is printed faster than toilet paper now,
Yes.
holding holding on to cash as if it's a good preservation of value, that is not going to hold true anymore. With so much cheap money being infiltrated into the system, rightly or wrongly, a lot of them will be going into higher return assets. I very much doubt it is going less and less amount is going into very low yielding or low interest rate government bonds. It will be going to equity. It will be going to real estate. It could be going to private equity. It could be going into precious metals or commodities. Just because the opportunity cost for this of not holding this cash is basically nothing now. So that's the basic premise of why cash is no longer king. It's really just a pauper.
Yes, that's right. I agree with you. There's another question for you. I have a rich relative. When he speaks, he has so much impact on influencing others, relatives of ours. Of course, relationship also count as well. But my impression is that when one was rich, he will be able to influence others more. What is your thought on this?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part? What was it? A benevolent?
This person was saying that I have a rich relative. When he speaks, he got so much impact on influencing others.
Mm.
He said because maybe it could be relationship.
Yeah.
But my impression is that when one was rich, he's able to influence others more. What is your thought on this?
Well, I think, out of it's human nature for us to show more reverence to someone who has greater wealth. Now, I think it's only showing reverence is okay, but I think, once you kind of like cross the line into preferential treatment, especially for brothers and sisters in church, that's crossing the line. But I think, I think it's an axiom. I think, if you have greater wealth, I mean, you do tend to have greater influence, provided that you show that your character, it has a fair amount of integrity, and that you're not a total clown, and that
Mhm.
you are not that you have that you're worthy of respect.
That's
If
right.
all those things are there together with the wealth, then yeah, I think it is um,
That's
it is
right.
human nature for that person to have greater influence.
Mm.
However, and this is a line from the movie Spider-Man. This is from Peter Parker's uncle. He said to Spider-Man, "With great power comes great responsibility." So, with this greater wealth, you will inevitably have greater influence.
Mm.
But
Yes.
I'm not sure what the context is. Whether this person was
Mhm.
influencing others benevolently, or whether it's more in a manipulative kind of way.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I think most important, uh, of course, people say that you got money, you can do better influence, but must do it in the right way. To,
Absolutely.
yeah, impacting in a way that is a blessing,
Hmm.
not to cause harm and pain to people, right?
Correct.
Okay, another question from the floor asking you this question. Roger, you mentioned that obedience brings blessing.
Hmm.
Can you share an incident got impressed to forego a lucrative deal and lost out on the potential profit? And how do you navigate through the process to walk away from the deal? So,
Wow.
so how did God bless you in return?
Wow. Okay. In the interest of time,
Mhm.
I,
Yeah.
I can only direct you to this
Yes.
book.
Mhm.
Um, so, okay,
Yep.
let me try to give a 2-minute answer to this. I sold everything in February 2018 out of obedience to the voice of God, and also to the supernatural revealing of the exact same word in the Bible that day within an hour. I sold everything, and I made good on my promise to the Lord on giving half of the profits above a certain share price. I made good on my promise to give that to church for premises. And then I focused on, you know, writing the book and being and sharing my testimony, that I didn't look for a job for a while. And then when I was given the platform and the opportunity at my first, quote unquote, big time speaking engagement at the Celebration of Generosity in April 2018, I had, after I delivered my, 55-minute testimony, I came off stage, and then I was shocked with an unexpected opportunity. The lady who sat next to me, she said, "Well, you mentioned on a no names basis the stock that you sold for, that was your biggest investment, and that you gave that profit, you shared that with your church. Now, is that company such and such listed in the U.S.?" I was like, "Yes." "How did you know?" And then she said, "Well, I wasn't planning on, talking about business here, because," but she said, "3 days earlier, I just got a mandate for an Israeli chip company. It's doing a Series D round, and a Chinese internet giant just, wanted to take the whole round, but, for a whole host of reasons, they were not allowed to. So she's got the mandate to basically sell the remaining portion of it." And she said to me, "This company, it's going to dethrone the one that you had just sold for the purpose of church premises." So just as I thought that was, my a sacrifice, it turned out I thought this was a big opportunity. So long story short, within a few hours, I heard another voice from God, but this time it was in a very different tone. I had never ever heard God say to me in such a stern and frightful tone. He said, "Do not do this. Do not do this." Um, so even though I went to Israel to do the due diligence trip and all that, I ended up choosing to obey and not invest. I have not kept in touch with the company. I still see the CEO's messages pop up in LinkedIn every now and then. But so I don't know whether in the end that was God was trying to. I don't know the reason why God told me not to, but I just chose to obey. I hope that's the kind of answer you're looking for.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Okay. There's another question that they say. I think this is quite straightforward, but anyway, I just give you this question. When you bless God's people, do you expect to be blessed back?
Okay, well, that's not the motivation, and that's not the motivation, but that tends to be what happens. That's how God has wired it. So, do you tamper with it and be like, okay, let me just go and deliberately and purposefully go and bless as many of God's people as possible, such that He will repay me and reward me in multiples of return. Well, what I would say is, if you take into account the ultimate truth about money, and that is, no matter how much you have, even if you could bring it with you beyond the grave and carry it with you to heaven, it's still not going to cut it. So, first of all, I mean, the way that God rewards you, it's up to Him. I mean, He's the owner. He can reward you now. He can reward you a year later, or He can reward you 100 years later when you're with Him. So just do good, I think, and know that you've served the Lord. I mean, what a privilege to be able to serve the supreme royalty of the whole universe. I think that's a reward in itself. Thank you.
Yep, I agree with you. This one is a statement. This person is giving the insight of just now talking about, you know, about the wealth. People who are wealthy. So, what's the insight outcome this person or influence? So, this is a statement. I think it's just a sharing by this person, which I think is good to share with you all. This particular person say humans tend to give reverence to people with wealth and status, when
Mm-hmm.
rightfully we should give reverence to the people who have integrity. Respect is to be earned, which is very
Mm-hmm.
true. Thank you for the insight. And I have another one asking you about situation right now.
Mm-hmm.
Roger, do you think that this pandemic and the accompanying financial turbulence is a forerunner of more such events in future? If so, should we as Christians participate in financial markets?
Okay. Well, first part of the question is, I mean, just read Revelation, right? I mean,
Yes,
I think there's there's more turbulence ahead before Jesus returns.
that's right.
But I think that now this kind of ties in with what I just said. There are still a lot of unreached people groups that need to hear the gospel. If we do not use our resources, if we don't grow our resources, then we would only be in depleting mode um, to able to finance and to help push ahead the completion of reaching all unreached people groups. Now, I mean, everything has risk. Even if you don't participate in financial markets, you already are, because that's already a decision in itself. If you don't participate unless, I mean, if you put, if what you mean is by putting all your money under your pillow, that's also risk, because a thief can break into your house and all the money's gone. Or, as we've discussed, if quantitative easing is basically steering a lot of like fresh and unwarranted funds to go into assets, and there's asset inflation, then whatever that you're holding on to in cash, that purchasing power will also go down. Now I don't want to take this. I don't want you to take this out of context. But there are 365 occurrences of "do not be afraid" in the Bible. It just works out to be one a day, to remind us to not be afraid. Now, I'm not saying that don't be afraid of financial markets, but but just there you can't be completely insulated from it. That's what I mean. One way or another, you're participating. Even your non-participation is already an implicit choice of going against what may happen in the markets. Obviously, everyone is blessed with a different level of comfort in different financial instruments and on different levels of market risk. And I think it's important to talk to your financial advisor about what level of risk you're comfortable with. But I'll just share a little bit more because the Holy Spirit just reminded me about this. When after I read Psalms 23 verse 3, I started to go from a lot of cash, and then I just piled into a lot of different assets. And this was before when the big crash happened. I just basically watched all my positions go down like this, and then I really had the peace that was beyond understanding. And the way I rationalize that is, well, if it keeps blowing up, then that's basically getting very close to the return of Jesus. Then who needs that money anyways? But if it doesn't, and if it rebounds, and and my thesis, my idea is right, that if there's any small hint that there's light at the end of the tunnel, then because of infinite QE, assets are going to reflate. Then it's good. The poor are going to have a really, really, really suffering time. So, yeah, I think fear is not the answer.
Yeah, that's right. We need to exercise our faith and not fear. And okay, one more question to go. I think that if we can hit to, now it's already 3:24. Today, so much is talked about integrating faith with work. Roger, how do you bring God into your work, your investment decision, and does God speaks to you and tell you what shares to buy?
Okay, well, first,
Uh-huh.
well, I've become a non-traditional missionary
Mhm.
basically since, by definition, since end of January 2018. So my workplace now is really the NGOs and the churches and different organizations that I interact with. But before that, when I was still working in banking, I had a Christian fellowship at CIMB, and we met daily, and we a fair number of PRC colleagues came to faith that way. And actually, I just had lunch with them 2 days ago, just to catch up with everyone. And I still send them daily devotionals every day. So that hopefully answers the first part of your question. Now, basically, I do view that God is the owner of my account, of my whole portfolio, and all of me and my family and my flat and everything. So what I've learned is that as a bare minimum, I need to consult with him, whether it's a good idea or not. Now, God doesn't speak to me like daily or hourly or even weekly. I mean, I only hear him at special occasions. But he has. I will attest to this. If it's something that's really either displeasing to him, or if he knows it's not a good idea for whatever reason, I will sense that. Because I'll tell you why. Because I have gone against that. I have learned my lesson. and this was maybe like a year or two, year and a half ago. It was on a currency derivatives trade, on yield enhancing over the renminbi, and God told me not to do it, but I did it anyways, and I lost some money there. Now, does he actively tell me, oh, go and buy this ticker or go buy that counter? No, he doesn't do that. But I think what he's given me is that he's given me a 25 years of experience in different aspects of banking. So unlike a lot of banking professionals who mostly have specialized in one area, it's just really interesting how God worked it out in my life. I did trading, I did convertible bonds, I did warrants, I did derivatives, and then I did some structuring, I did some lending, and then I did IPOs. I raised IPOs for people, and so I had a fair amount of insight on also equity research and how the fund flows kind of work. So I'm a jack of all trades. So and I think the most important thing is God has made me humble, that I am always willing to ask people if I don't know something, and I listen. I genuinely listen to advice, and between synthesizing on information and just and God's given me some wisdom, so that's the blend. That's the blend that He's given.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. There's someone give a very great, a good encouragement to you, Roger. They salute you, Roger, that even though you have a young family, you're able to give obediently. I think it's hard for young adults to give to others while saving for children's education, whatever it is. And also, must be the grace of God. So this person already encouraging you, Roger, with these words. And a last question because of time. One more for you. There seems to be a consensus China being most resilient market this year, but the fact of second outbreak and successive liquidity injection recently seems to suggest weaknesses. What's your view on the China's recovery?
Oh, no, okay, this is my own view exclusively.
Yeah, that's
And I'm certainly not, I always stress again, I'm not a financial advisor. Seek your own financial advice before you do anything. I think that China is going to take number one spot.
Yep.
I've invested in a lot of U.S. stocks in the past, and as a matter of fact, the one that I sold that generated the most profit, that I shared, the proceeds, the profits with my church, is a U.S. stock. But basically, now for a long time, God told me to be still, and so I didn't dabble in the stock market. But once I got the notion that I should invest, on behalf of the poor, then I only chose to invest in Hong Kong and China listed stocks, and partly because I genuinely believe and I have good reason to believe that the amount of institutional capital that is the weighting of China exposure is way too low compared to where China actually is as a representation of the whole world economy. So number one, it is underweighted by the likes of MSCI. So there's bound to be room for reweighting. Number two, I genuinely, just looking at recent events and everything, I genuinely believe that China is in a much better place going forward than say the United States. And thirdly, it's partly because I don't like staying up late in the evening, so I don't want to stay up late and look at the U.S. market. So I just, for all those reasons together, I chose to only invest in equities listed in Hong Kong, and a lot of them are Chinese businesses. Thank you.
Roger, for all the insightful answers. Very well done. Now I want to pass the time to our Family First chairman, our wonderful Elder Tan Teck Seng.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Roger, for the very insightful sharing with us. And time is now almost up. It's already now we are 2 minutes exceeding our time. And I just want to, thank all the participants who have come on. But before we go off, can we just have a group picture? Just, all of you just come on to the screen. And and then put your thumbs up, that we can actually have a picture of you. Just put a thumbs up. Okay, first picture, all right. And second one, that we can go and see the second one. Yes, yeah. Second one, thumbs up also. Thumbs up. Yeah. Good. I think we have yeah. So yeah, thanks Chansun. Chansun, thank you so much. And so we want to close this with a word of prayer. And we really want to thank God that week after week we can actually have people come on to share with us. So next week, well, let me just put on the screen for our this next week the speakers, all right, so that you will know who the speaker is, and then we can sort of just let me put the speaker on. Yeah, okay. Let me put the speaker on. Okay. Now we have a just a moment. Wait. Okay. Okay, let me share the screen. Okay, next week, you can see that we have Derek Liu. Derek Liu will be coming on next week. Can you see the screen? Wait. Just a moment. Let me just get out. Stop the share first. Okay. Let me share again. Sorry. Okay, can you see the screen? Okay. Now, Derek will be coming on next week to share with us on how to cope with money crisis. Now, Derek, actually, he is a commentator on geopolitics and also economics with a biblical prophecy perspective. And he used to work with a bank investment banker and serve in several senior executive positions in also multinational conglomerates. And actually, he told me he retired very young, and I suppose he made tons of money, and so he retired young, and then now he's actually spending very much of his time to actually mentor young people, young professionals, how to actually manage, their finances, right? So he'll be coming on to talk about how to cope with money crisis, and so do tune in and just come and also join us next week. All right. Okay. So let me just close with a word of prayer. Father, I just want to thank you for today. And thank you, the Lord, that you have brought Roger to come on, to come and share with us. And we know, the Lord, that you have blessed all of us with the blessing that is beyond human comprehension. And we want to thank you, the Lord, for all our participants who are here today, that they also are blessed by this Roger Lam sharing. And we know, Lord, that you have called us to be a good steward of your resources. And you say that money is always, Lord, that is an issue, but we know the Lord, that those who actually delight in you, and they will be just like a tree planted by the river, that they will continue to flourish, that they will continue to prosper. And we know the Lord, that as we begin to prosper, you will also use us mightily to become a blessing to other people. We want to thank you, the Lord, There's such a wonderful time that we can gather together to give you all the glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you very much, all of you. And yeah, thank you, Roger.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah,
Praise
thank
the
you,
Lord.
everyone.
God bless.
God bless you. We have Nelly to come on some more. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anything that you want to still have fellowship, right?
Yeah, I can stay. I can stay on for another, 10, 15 minutes. No problem.
The crowd loves to be here.
Yeah.
Most of them still here. Yes.
If you
Yeah,
want to-
Roger, can I ask you one question
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
about, hearing from God? Do you hear his voice?
Audible
Is it audible, or is that,
in your mind.
when you're reading the Bible, it kind of highlights to you things that God wants you to do? Or is it just from the environment? How are you, do you have the kind of confidence that it's always God that's talking to you, such that, you really get the direction that it is from God?
Mhm.
Okay, that's enough. 3 questions in one.
3 questions in one.
Yeah.
I have some more questions, but that will do for time being. Oh, one other thing, it's kind of interesting about hearing from God. Now, there was one time, one of the pastors, every week in his sermons, he would talk about, oh, today I hear this, tomorrow I hear that. And then some point in time, he says that, well, I better be careful, because that may not be actually God speaking to me. It's maybe my own desires, whatever it is.
Okay.
And then there was, the elder from the church, and he says, I only heard once from God, very clear message. What can you make out of all of these different voices, different opinions?
Okay. Well, let me attempt to answer some of those questions. It's it's not. What I'll say is it's more audible now. Whether it's through my eardrum or it's in my head, it's hard to distinguish between the two. But what I can assure you is that it is not like I'm just thinking along something and then it's not like an extension of drifting of my mind or something like that. And now I wouldn't boast that I am 100% confident, but but my confidence comes from this, and that is every time, from what I deem to be that voice that I've heard, whenever I have obeyed, whenever I've eventually agreed to obey doing that, something completely supernatural and unexpected happens, for the benefit of not just myself, but also for others. Now, if that weren't the case, then, then it's somewhat worthless. But this has happened so many times and it's actually on the increase. I wouldn't, I'm not like that preacher where, I would say today, yesterday. I don't necessarily hear him every day, but just the level of coincidences is just, on the exponential increase, and things like that just don't happen by chance. And so that's also where my increasing sense of confidence is coming from. And I also know that my alignment with God is improving. There are even more areas beyond the 4 areas where I wrote about in Change of Control. This may be, and the Holy Spirit just put this in my head, even I'm trying to control my tongue. Now, James says that's impossible, but I'm trying to do that more, to be more deliberate, because for the benefit of, my family and others. So it may be impossible to be perfectly under control, to keep my tongue under control. But you know, as long as I have a desire to head in that way, I am I I am 100% confident that that is, you know, from God's perspective, that I'm trying to align with Him even more. So better alignment always means better connection, bigger bandwidth, and so on and so forth. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, I think it
Thank you.
sounds very good actually. Now there was a comment from the person who is pretty well known, and this is what he says. He says that the closer you are to God,
Mm-hmm.
the more sure that it is God who is speaking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I truly believe in that.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on what that question
That's-
Roger mentioned,
Stanley.
I guess our God is so creative and manifold. And with that, so His so-called speaking to us is never boring or routine on a single way or a single mode.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it's just audible, sometimes it's through reading the Bible, something is when you go for a prayer walk, sometimes it's through even chatting with someone,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, something just spoke and that you actually had it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are confirmation. And in that sense of the word, I guess that at the end of the day, when we say God spoke or speak to you, me, and others,
Mm-hmm.
always is to glorify Himself and not to you or even to the group or whatever. Because I think God wants to prevent us to set up our own, what we call it, ivory tower,
Mm-hmm.
or the Babel Tower.
Mm.
We have to be careful that we are not idolize a person or organization or even a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Not all
Definitely.
actually Babel Tower, we are not careful.
Mm.
So in that sense of the word, God always, when He speak, like, Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I'm God. But
Mm-hmm.
summarize that be still to be aligned with me. So in that sense of the word, what Roger just says that all these things when God speaks is actually to be aligned with Him, so that we know where to go, who not to meet, who to meet, what contract to sign, what contract not to sign. That document is fake. This is not fake, and that is so amazing that I think you also summarize that sense. When we are closer to God, then it's more likely that God speak rather than the devil.
Yeah.
The devil is always speak to you, and it's a different one, is to not to glorify God.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I just want to thank Roger for those testimony and affirmation, and because I have a lot of those that God spoke in different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
they come to pass. So I think the other way is that when God speaks, those things is actually come to pass.
Yes.
And pass is not just to yourself, but also to the community, to the group of people, and that's why one time is accident, second time lucky, third time coincidence. But you know, 50 times, 100 times, and it come to pass and has been a blessing to the community.
Yeah.
And in that sense of the word, it's so wonderful to this family and finance and fitness that has not only blessed this group of 60 just now, but has been blessing to others community and cascade down to other group as well. And this is a disciple journey. So there's another thing that when God speaks, He's actually talking about the discipleship journey with Him and with the group of people that God gives to us. So thank you.
No, thank you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. You may leave if you want to, but if you want to stay around, feel free to do it because Roger say he can be still around, and I am Texan are still around. Okay. So anyone wants to ask any question, feel free to ask now.
Roger, I'm
Yeah.
Steve Kong from Singapore.
Hi.
I would say I'm very blessed by what you have shared with us today.
Oh, thank you so much.
I have made many mistakes in my finances in the past, even though I have been successful in my early years, you know.
Mhm.
So I would like to, if I may, I'd like to be in touch with you and to benefit continually from your guidance. Is it possible to be in touch with you at all?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna share my my website link on the chat group, and then you can contact me through my website.
I'm not in your chat group, you know. How do I get into your chat group?
No,
I'm in another general chat group. Yeah.
it's on the Zoom. It's on here. It's on here.
Yeah. The chat group means at this chat group. Yeah, at this.
Oh, at this chat group. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Roger. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So those who ask about Roger's book, you also can look at his contact at the chat book, and then you can check. Then you can ask.
Where do I find it? Where do I find it? I'm so sorry. Where do I find it? Where do I find the contact?
Okay, at the bottom of the page, there's a button called chat. If you have your cursor, scroll down.
Yep.
Do you see?
Oh, I'm on my handphone actually. I see participation. Is it in participation? Participants.
No. CHAT chat. Steve.
Oh, yes.
You register through our Facebook, am I right?
Yeah. No, registered to Stanley.
Okay, I asked Stanley to
Stanley.
give it to you. Okay. Brother,
Yes. Thank you so much.
Stanley,
Yeah.
can you note down? You get the contact of Roger and give it to your friend Steve.
Oh, RogerLam.net. I saw here, right? Is that
That's
Roger?
right. That's
Okay,
right.
okay,
That's
you
right.
got it.
Okay.
All right,
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
WhatsApp as well.
Okay, anybody else before we call it off a day?
Roger, on this finance, but the latest Hong Kong situation, because you are right there, with your son going to school and yourself and so on. So, what is all these things that you are seeing?
What? Sorry. What is what?
Riots and then with the Beijing, all this law and so on and so on. You are right on the spot there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm definitely against violence. I think it's okay to have different political views, but you know, once it becomes like violent and you know vandalism and all that, I I'm very much against that. I think it's I mean like what our government is saying, that every every government has national security laws, except Hong Kong, and I think that says it all. I mean, once it gets to a point where Hong Kong is being used as a battleground to meddle with the country as a whole, then I think that's unacceptable. So and and it's not like China introduced this in the year 2000, like 3 years into the handover. It's 23 years after, and it's only because of a certain path dependency that's unfolded, which is unfortunate. But I think this is definitely not the end of Hong Kong. What is clear is that it's in a way, in the short to medium term, its importance as a capital market for a lot of major Chinese corporations that were previously listed in the US. A lot of them are coming to listing in Hong Kong now. So think of all the capital raisings that will need to be done here. So, again, just thinking rationally and wisely about, and instead of emotionally or out of fear. I think that should be the way to look at things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brother Roger, because of time just now, there's a person who gave 3 questions, and then I have voiced his 1 question, but he didn't want to voice out himself. He wants me to help him.
Okay.
But I think I give only out of the 2 questions left there by him. I will just give you 1 because I look at the time. I want to respect everybody's timing. I think most of them want to go off, but Asian culture is that not so 不好意思. Okay, so can I get 1 question to you before we close?
Mm-hmm.
When you think is the bottom of the equity market?
I think we've already hit bottom.
Okay.
Again, I'm not a licensed financial, consultant. So, please consult with your own advisor. And I'll preface that infinite QE, and we are closer to the end of the pandemic than 3 months ago.
That's, yeah, well,
That's my humble view.
Yeah, but whatever it is, we are blessed. We have the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, friends. Looks like we are hitting to 4 p.m. Malaysia and Hong Kong time. We thank you for Brother Roger graciously stay for another half an hour with us. We thank you so much, and perhaps we can have you another time. Yeah, Roger.
I would love to. Thank you.
The crowd seems to love you. Still staying on. If not, I'm ringing the bell.
Right. Be strong in the Lord. Okay. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
God
Thank you.
bless.
God bless you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Andy.
Roger.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Eng.